Why is no one asking if there is any treatment for COVID-19 patients in Trinidad and Tobago? A dangerous development taking place in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. We explore a brutal attack on a Venezuelan national, and Joe Biden officially accepts the DNC nomination. Okay, we're back. Episode number 8. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Viewpoint, the Brian Heeraman podcast. And thank you for tuning in. But before we get started, here are a couple things. As you all know, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley is under self-quarantine, having been exposed to someone who had the COVID-19 virus or who probably had the COVID-19 virus. In any event, I want to wish the Prime Minister a speedy recovery. Also, former Member of Parliament Dr. Tim Gopisin has been diagnosed with the COVID-19 virus, and I want to wish him also a speedy recovery. And it's been reported that the Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith, is in St. Clair Medical Clinic undergoing some sort of bladder treatment. I also want to wish him a speedy recovery as well. I want to wish all these gentlemen a speedy recovery. No one wants to wish ill health upon anyone, regardless of the situation or those persons' point of view. I myself don't agree with all of their points of view, but nonetheless, you shouldn't wish ill health upon anyone. So, gentlemen, speedy recovery to you all, and I hope you get back to doing what you do best, serving the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Right. Before we dive into the first topic, let me just remind you all that this podcast is available on Spotify, YouTube, also on the Google Podcasts. I'm still having a little bit of a minor technical difficulty in getting onto iTunes. I hope to resolve that soon. But in the meantime, folks, you need to download the Google Podcast. That's where it's at, folks, the Google Podcast. It gives you a wide selection of not just my podcast, or to remember, Corey Shep About Podcast as well is also on those platforms that I mentioned. He's also available on iTunes. But back to the Google Podcast. That's where it's at, folks. There's a whole wide selection of other podcasts that you all can follow and keep update on what's going on, not just on international affairs, but sports and all those different topics that you may very well find yourself inclined to follow. There are podcasts out there for everything. So check out the Google Podcast. It's a great way. Don't waste your time on radio. This is where it's at now. The future is on podcasts. And I mean, if you're a conservative thinking, there's Bill O'Reilly podcast, there's Ben Shapiro podcast, there's a host of podcasts for regardless of where you fall on the political line. If you're a moderate person, there's a Joe Rogan podcast. Check out these podcasts and explore your thinking, your viewpoint. It's going to be great for you all. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. So let's get started. First topic: COVID-19. It seems as though I talk about COVID-19 on every single podcast episode, but it's just that COVID-19 is trending so often, And I've been asking this. I've found myself asking this question not just now, but I follow international affairs, and I question, why isn't anyone asking Dr. Parasaram, the Minister of Health, what treatment are we using in Trinidad and Tobago to treat infected COVID-19 patients? What are we doing when you're infected? You go to a health center, you go to a hospital or one of these facilities and they quarantine you, or you're quarantined at home. What then? What treatment are they giving you to assist in the recovery from COVID-19? What are we doing? Is it a 50-50 chance? Are we waiting for natural selection to take its course? What are we doing? And there are treatments out there, and that's why I'm asking, because I'm not hearing anyone from the media asking these officials about treatment to treat infected persons. As of today, total number of cases or total number of patients infected is over 1,000. And I'm afraid that what's going to happen with these patients when they're affected, and as we can see, people are dying again from COVID-19 virus, and I don't want it to be a situation where we're just sitting idly by and just waiting for a vaccine that may come as late as November, because there are 3 human trial vaccines taking place in the US right now. But between now and November, a lot of things could happen. I mean, just look at the short space of time between when the general election was held to now. Look at the numbers now. I have my own opinions as it relates to COVID-19 coming out of vacation after the general election. And I've spoken about it already. But beyond that, we need to have some sort of treatment to assist people, to give people an opportunity, a fighting chance. And why do I say that we need to have a treatment to assist people with regards to when they're infected with COVID-19? It's simply because today, as of today, I listened to a press conference from the White House, and a next treatment was put forward. Now, this treatment gives you a 30% recovery chance for those persons infected with COVID-19. And this treatment is called convalescent plasma. So basically, there's no vaccine, but convalescent plasma is a protein that is used to fight COVID-19 from it's an antibody that's from person who were infected with the virus, and they're now using their plasma to assist in defeating COVID-19. So convalescent plasma was approved for emergency treatment by the FDA in hospitals. But it's not the only treatment that's been approved by the FDA. There are other treatments approved by the FDA for emergency use in hospitals. There's one called chloroquine, which is used to treat malaria, and it's also been given FDA emergency use approval. There's also one, which is probably the most popular one, I guess, in the US, is something called remdesivir, which is also been given emergency approval for use in hospitals by the FDA. So, there's just these three treatments that I've researched and found out and got a lot of information on. But what are we using in Trinidad? That's where the question is at heart. What are we using? Is the Minister of Health, is anybody in authority in contact with these people to see if we can get our hands on this drug to treat infected patients? We just can't sit idly by and wait for something to happen. We have to be doing something more progressive. What are we doing with the patients who have recovered in Trinidad and Tobago? Are we trying to collect their plasma? I don't know if we are that technical, but are we trying to collect their plasma and probably even send it to some of these institutions so that they can use, and maybe we get back some drugs for which use to our infected patients? It's mind-boggling that these journalists and I would sit there and they would ask totally irrelevant questions and the most basic questions they won't ask. Another important question that I see myself thinking of is that, prior to general elections, there was talk about the Minister of Health that they were trying to get their hands on ventilators. What has become of that? Did we get those ventilators? Ventilators are an important part for people who are infected with COVID-19. Respiratory problems is quite common. Did we get our hands on these ventilators? What is the situation as regards to the capacity of ventilators now? And compare that to early March. Did we make any improvement? Did we do anything special with regards to getting more ventilators? The number is over 1,000 folks. And given the trends and how this number seems to be increasing, I get the feeling it's going to increase. And I don't want it to increase. No one wants these numbers to increase. But it's scary. It's scary how these numbers are increasing. And they're not increasing like in 5 and 6, they're increasing in 10s now, 20s. And we can't try to make it a small country. Our healthcare system is going to be overwhelmed at the blink of an eye with these numbers coming out like that. Especially since we have nationals across there and we're trying to bring them back home. I even hope that we're trying to bring them back home. We need to be doing something. We need to be doing something more than just sitting by. We need to be informing the population more than just mask and sanitizing. People are going to get the virus. And what then? We have to find a way to treat people. We just can't wait for it. Wait for something to fall from the sky. We need to get a drug. Is it that when we call the US, there's no answer on the end? Is this repayment for dealing with Maduro, with those whole Delcy Rodriguez, that we are last in the line? Tell the population about a treatment, about something that you're doing more than just this mask, sanitizing, wash hand thing. That is not enough. We need more than that. But moving on to another note, I've noticed something quite interesting taking place within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. A very interesting development has taken place over the last few days, and it has to deal with the Commissioner of Police and his acting Commissioner of Police, Mr. Erwin Hackshaw. Now, I don't know if you all have been paying attention, but it's been my observation that when it comes to dealing with issues close to the commissioner's heart, he has two standards. He has two laws that he applies. Now, this is just my opinion, but I give you a quick example. Remember when this COVID-19 lockdown first started, and it was reported that a certain clothes store in Port of Spain was open and selling cloth and that kind of thing. And when the matter was reported to the Commissioner of Police, he responded by saying he cannot bark at every car passing. Something to that effect, he said. Basically saying not every case that was reported to him, he could run after it. Okay, that's what he said then. And the reason why, you look back and you rethink what he's saying is because he applies two standards. As I've mentioned numerous times in other episodes and other podcasts, there are incidents that take place that the Commissioner of Police finds himself front and center present with his gang of police officers to pay a particular interest. But when the interest is aligned to him, he's not around. He's very he's very dismissive, if I can use that word. Bring it back to three. Heeraman Hackshaw, Assistant Commissioner of Police. Now, the Police Complaints Authority did an investigation on Mr. Heeraman Hackshaw as it pertains to a significant amount of funds deposited in his personal bank account across numerous financial institutions. I think they mentioned the amount was $2 million deposited in several bank accounts. According to the Police Complaints Authority, led by Mr. David West, it's in contravention of Regulation 133B. It's also a breach of 151 2A C D1 of the Police Service Regulations. That's the outcome of the investigation as it relates to Mr. Heeraman Hackshaw, Assistant Commissioner of Police, work that he did on his side. Those work was in breach of these regulations. Now, the Police Complaint Authority has recommended disciplinary action to take place or to be conducted against Mr. Heeraman Hackshaw. Now, on May 20th, the Commissioner of Police said that the police had completed its own investigation of Mr. Hackshaw and they have found nothing wrong. Yeah. So the police did their own investigation, they found nothing wrong. The Police Complaints Authority did their own investigation and they recommend disciplinary action. Now you wonder why it's so difficult for the police service to solve any crime. They can't even investigate their own properly, or maybe there's a reluctance to investigate their own properly. But we go on, we carry on. Let's get to the bottom of this. On June 8th, the Commissioner of Police said the file will be sent to the DPP on Mr. Heeraman Hackshaw on the investigation. However, on June 18th, he comes back again and said, the Commissioner of Police, that is, that the file will be sent after the Police Complaints Authority completed this investigation on Mr. Hackshaw. You see, when the matter is at heart for Commissioner Griffith, the standard is not the same. And that in itself is very, very dangerous for democracy. You cannot have two standards being applied when it comes to matters as serious as this. How then is it that you expect the population of Trinidad and Tobago to trust the police service when blatantly they can see that you're applying different standards? The commissioner is now saying that his hands are tied. He cannot do anything against Mr. Hackshaw because it requires a senior officer to investigate him, Mr. Hackshaw does, and he's the only senior officer available at this point in time because the Police Service Commission has not appointed other deputy commissioner of police. So he's throwing it back on the PSC. You see, Commissioner of Police, if it is your intention to build trust in the police service, you need to operate fair, free, and as much as possible independent. Independence is a word I plan to explore in another podcast episode when I deal with independent senators. But for right now, in this context of the Commissioner of Police, he's not operating free and fair. He cannot have two standards as it relates to apparently his friend Mr. Hackshaw and the normal man on the street. It's just not going to work right. It's not going. The population at large is not going to see you acting unfair-minded. It's going to breed distrust, disloyalty, and before you know it, you will not be able to gather information from the public at large. I warn the Commissioner of Police, he should desist and refrain from operating under bias, which is clearly what's being shown in the manner in which he's dealing with Mr. Hackshaw. You may very well not be able to appoint a disciplinary committee because you require senior officers that you don't have, but you're still the Commissioner of Police, and if someone has been recommended for disciplinary action, you and you alone have the power to put that person behind a desk or suspension as you see fit. You cannot have someone who has been recommended for disciplinary action by the Police Complaints Authority operating as per norm. Then what? Is Mr. Hackshaw going to try to intimidate witnesses, given that he's still operating as a normal officer? You have within your powers, Commissioner of Police, the authority and the relevant discretion to show the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that's how you operate at a higher level and you would do what is right. Not because you've been told to do so, but because you are someone of character and integrity. Someone of good character, that is. But we see what happens. I don't appreciate what's happening here, because if you can do this in such a blatant manner, it's scary what you can do behind the doors, behind closed doors. We are treading on dangerous grounds here, folks. The Commissioner of Police is declaring his hand as it relates to police officers who he deems to be his friends. Could you imagine the amount of distrust that is being shown by other officers within the service? They're going to have a hands-off approach, and before you know it, we're not going to be able to recover. And as we're on the topic of police service and police officers, did you all read that story where this 18-year-old Venezuelan girl was raped and left for dead by two what's a word? By two animals? I don't even know they're animals. They're probably worse than that. 18-year-old Venezuelan girl on her way home. I think she's living Superior, but she took a taxi to go to San Juan or something to that effect. Raped and left for dead by two gentlemen. Now, one of these gentlemen was a security guard. Is reported his name is Heeraman. Another one is a special reserve police officer, Mr. Rodriguez. And they've both been charged and denied bail. Now, the girl, the Venezuelan national that is, she may very well end up losing her eye, and of course she would require cosmetic surgery. But could you imagine the level of how traumatized this girl must be? And we're talking about the police service and different standards. Now I expect the Commissioner of Police and whoever needs to be to throw the entire book at these two gentlemen for what they have done to this girl. Now, having said that, it's okay to throw the book behind these two animals. But you see different standards? Why is it not okay to apply the same standards to Mr. Hackshaw? And that is my point. Different standards breed a level of distrust, not just within the ranks of the police service, but in the wider population at large. Now, these two men who did this to this girl, they deserve to be thrown in some bottomless pit somewhere and just left there. Now, we say they're innocent and proven guilty, fine, but they were still charged and they still denied bail, they still face a magistrate, whatever happens. Apparently there's security camera footage with them picking up the girl. It is unbelievable that this level of brutality would take place. And especially so by a special reserve police officer, it gives the police service in its entirety a horrible name. You see, the police service can do 1,000 good things, but you see that one bad thing, that is what people remember. And no, personally, I don't think Gary Griffith has done anything good when it comes to the police service. I haven't seen anything. All I've seen him do is, find himself sending his officers to arrest, you know, underprivileged people from parties, going to Zassan parties. That's all he does. There's no murder solving. There's nothing going on with this commissioner of police. And now when it comes to his pal, Erwin Hackshaw, you know, nothing. Nothing being done. If Erwin Hackshaw was some guy who probably stole something from a supermarket, oh yeah, he did. He find himself there. Folks, as I've mentioned on numerous podcasts before, different standards. It's not, I don't know what more to say. It's mind-boggling. But what these two gentlemen have done to this scale, it's unspeakable. It's a message need to be sent as it relates to rape in this country. I mean, as it relates to when people are charged for rape, a message needs to be sent. Yes, the judge and them, they would have their way they operate within their limits and that, but we can't. We need to send a message. We need to send a message with these cases. It's when I first read this case, when I first heard about this case, I just couldn't believe it because I mean, first of all, it's a non-national. I mean, I don't know. Have we become such a brutal society? Is that it? Wow. I want to move on. I want to move on to a different point. I want to move on to something probably just as horrible, but then I'll be diminishing how horrible that situation was. But Joe Biden, he's accepted the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, nomination to be the candidate for president. Now, I'm a fan of Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden suffers from serious dementia. He doesn't even know where he is and on a good day. And he's just being placed here as a shell of a human being in an attempt to defeat Donald Trump. But Joe Biden, as I've mentioned, may very well not live out any 4 year period, and Kamala Harris would then be in charge. And Kamala Harris, as I've mentioned before, is a far left candidate. Anyway, the point in bringing all of this is that Joe Biden he accepted the presidential nomination from the Democrats and is now off to the official campaigning. Let's see what's going to happen campaigning. We have a president who is campaigning openly, and we have Joe Biden who's hiding in his basement. God knows if he's going to make it to the debate stage. But I can say one thing: if he does make it to that debate stage, it's not going to be something that everyone could view. It's going to be heart-wrenching when Donald Trump is finished with him, because if Joe Biden, that is, does go into one of his moments where he makes these crazy mistakes about where he is and who he's talking to and what he's talking about, Donald Trump is going to pounce on him. And that in on itself is not going to be pretty. I hope Democrats know what they're doing, because if Joe Biden is really sick and they are putting this guy to go through this at some point in time, there's a place in hell for those individuals. There definitely has to be a place in hell for those individuals. So, on a good note, I see Angostura has launched another flavor white oak. This one is called white oak watermelon. It's an addition to what they have launched before. Last year, I think they had launched white oak sorrel, and then they had launched white oak coconut, and now white oak watermelon. So all my drinking friends out there who drink alcohol, I personally don't drink alcohol, but something else good for you all to take in on this with all the craziness happening in Trinidad and Tobago, something to possibly even, I don't know if it's to look forward to, because like I said, I myself I don't drink alcohol, but it's something good, I guess. I'm told from some of my friends who drink alcohol that the white oak coconut tastes extremely well. So maybe the watermelon, hey, maybe it might taste well. Something good to look forward to. Okay, folks, I'm gonna close it off there today. As I mentioned before, stay tuned, keep listening, and see you next time for episode number 9.